Good morning. Welcome to online worship from the parish house of First Parish in Hingham, the Old Ship Church, Unitarian Universalist. I'm the minister of the church, Reverend Ken Reed Brown, and together sharing the conduct of this service with our music director, Christopher Nicholson Mann. It's good to be together once again, not just the two of us, we enjoy that, but knowing that you are there listening, watching, participating, wherever and whoever you are. All are welcome. The usual reminders, two things on our oldshipchurch.org website homepage. First, ways to help. At the bottom of the homepage, you'll find a list of food pantries, shelters, health services for the underserved, and more, and ways to contribute to those important efforts during these days especially. You'll also find on our homepage ways to support Old Ship with your gift. We can't literally pass the plate each week during these virtual online services, but even so, the gifts that we're able to give help to support our ministries. Thank you very much. This is, of course, Memorial Day weekend, a day and weekend of remembrance, particularly for those who've served in war and many of whom who lost their lives, for whom grief is still real, however long it's been. So we'll begin this morning by singing a song that most of you know, and if you don't, you may catch on pretty quickly. Pete Seeger's "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?" Though Christopher and I will not be able to hear you, we do invite you to sing along. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? On to young men, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? On for soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? On the graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time passing. Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time ago. Where have all the graveyards gone? On to flowers, everyone. When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn? Consolation by Mendelssohn. Though at a distance, we have once again gathered in spirit. May our time together bring comfort to those who need comfort, inspiration to those who need inspiration, bring all-embracing love, God's other name, to everyone. On this Memorial Day Sunday, words for the lighting of our flaming chalice come from my colleague, Reverend Kathleen McTeague. She wrote, "In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us, it is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. We have a history with those lives. We belong to the same motion. They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be. They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady. Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, their hearts. We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living." And so I light the flaming chalice of our Unitarian Universalist faith with these words in mind and heart, uniting us with one another, with all those who've gone before, and with all those who will come after. Story. It's an old story I just came across this week. It was told, retold, I guess, by Rabbi Alexander Davis from Minnesota. And it goes like this. There was a poor farmer, plowing his field when a disguised prophet Elijah, so he didn't know it was the prophet Elijah, comes along and says, "My good fellow, you have 6 years of wealth coming to you. Do you want your treasure now or at the end of your life?" Well, the farmer didn't take this seriously. He didn't believe the man, didn't know it was Elijah. But Elijah came back over and again, and finally, the farmer, went to his wife and said, "What should we do?" And she says, "Take the money now, if indeed there is money." Well, when the farmer gave Elijah their decision, Elijah said to him, "Even before you get to the door of your house, the wealth shall be yours. You'll find that you've been blessed." And indeed it was so. As he approached his house, his children were playing in the front, and there was the treasure just under the soil. Enough money to support the family for 6 years. They thanked God for their good fortune. Well, at first, the farmer and his wife, they wondered what should they do with this fortune. They could buy a new house, they could go on a trip, and so on. But being simple, pious, and generous folks, in the end, they decided to give it away as charity. Well, at the end of 6 years, Elijah returned and said, "The time has come for me to take back what I gave you." Well, they told him they'd given it away to people who had more need of it than they, and that if he wanted the money back, he'd have to go all around collecting it from the people they'd help. Well, the story concludes. God saw all that they had done, all they'd done for others, and blessed them with additional good fortune and wealth to last them and their family their lifelong. Here ends the story. Our interlude from Christopher Cuando el Pobre, when the poor ones.
nuestro mismo camino. When the poor ones who have nothing still are giving, when the thirsty pass the cup water to share, when the wounded offer others strength and healing, we see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way. We see God here by our side, walking our way.
Thank you, Christopher. What a beautiful message, beautifully sung. And in the spirit of what we've heard, the time of the service when we support one another, whatever our own challenges might be, it's our time of sharing joys, sorrows, and deeply felt concerns, and to light candles for each. And several of you have asked that a candle be lit on your behalf. First, from Mary Thomas, who asks that we light a candle of love and memory for a childhood friend of hers, Tefta Demirali. Despite early life losses and hard times, Mary writes, she was a loving person, a contributing member of the community throughout her lifetime. We, Mary says, spent time together in elementary and junior high school and summer camp. I loved her brightness and easy nature. Candle of love and memory for Mary's dear friend. Our daughter Sandra asked for a candle to be lit for a dear friend and colleague of hers, Lisa, who lost her 5-year-old nephew, Logan, last week in a tragic accident. We light this candle with Lisa and Logan and all their family in our minds and hearts. From Old Shippers, Maureen and her daughter Julie, they write, a candle of joy lit for Kate, also Julie's mom. Kate, whose slow but sure recovery from COVID-19 brings great relief to us, Maureen writes. We send continued healing prayers to Kate. And from another Kate, Kate Doyle, another member of our congregation, who writes, did you know that 4 Old Shippers share today as their birthday? Janet Blampede, Diane Elliott, Angel West, and me, writes Kate. She asked that a candle be lit for those 4, and perhaps there are some other birthdays this day as well. A happy birthday candle. And these remaining candles I will light for any joys, sorrows, or concerns deeply felt, even though they've been unexpressed here among us. And certainly these candles burn in memory of all those that we particularly remember on this Memorial Day weekend. May we now pause. Pause, slow down, breathe into this moment, become more fully awake to this moment we share in spirit. We pause in meditation, prayer, and silence. As we reach a deeper presence in the moment. Heart's yearnings may arise, prayers to the God of our hearts, God of all blessings. This Memorial Day Sunday, we pray especially for all those who grieve, whether for a loss recently during this pandemic, and whether for COVID or other reasons, or for a loss a long time ago, those fallen in war, all those we grieve. And we do remember those, especially on this weekend, who lost their lives in war, and hold in our hearts all who grieve those losses. And as every week during these days, we pray for all in need of help and healing for whatever reason, for the ill, for the hungry, for those facing financial hardship. All this along with continued prayers of gratitude and for the well-being of the helpers and healers. And prayers of gratitude for those who lead us with knowledge, lead us with wisdom, lead us with compassion. As we pause in silent communion, wherever we are, whoever we are, whatever our circumstances. As you know, Ramadan has just come to an end for our Muslim sisters and brothers. The celebration of Ramadan and of Eid at the end of Ramadan has been very different, just as Easter and Passover were very different this year. In any case, honoring the end of Ramadan, another reading from the poetry of Jalaluddin Rumi, Sufi Muslim poet, The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whomever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Here ends the reading. Challenging, hard reading, worth conversation. That will be for another time. Rumi's The Guest House. And now, something familiar to many of you and important in these times. Sing along if you know some of it. Christopher will do most of the singing. Lean on Me.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but load you have to bear that you can carry. I'm right up the road, I'll share your load. If you just call me, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'd understand. We all need somebody to lean on.
Amen to that. We all need somebody to lean on. I hope you all have somebody to lean on. Lean on me if you need to. A few words. We're living in what could be called a liminal period of time. Now, that's not a word we hear or use much, liminal. But I'm finding it a helpful word. It comes from a root simply meaning threshold. We know what that means. Threshold, suggesting we're neither here nor there. We're in some kind of in-between place. May not even be clear where we're going, what's next on the other side of the threshold. I think this pretty well describes at least one dimension of these days that we're currently sharing on the planet. Now, you all know that experience of going from one room to another and then entirely forgetting why it was you were going to that other room, what you were looking for, what you were going to do. I know you know it because it's universal. Scientific studies have actually proven it's universal. Something happens. For some reason, that crossing the threshold, going through a doorway, cleans out some little portion of our short-term memory, I suppose making room for an openness to whatever comes next, whatever that next room has to offer or has by way of challenge for us. Well, what would it be like if we paused? What would it be like if we paused on the threshold, paused intentionally in liminal, in between space, in between time? I'm talking now again, not just about going from one room to the next, but about this period of time in which we're all living. What if we were to pause intentionally and allow ourselves to experience the threshold? What it might be clearing out, what it might be preparing us for something new, something better, maybe a revisioning of our personal or collective lives. Now, it seems to me that another, and I think you'll see, related way of describing what we're all living through, each very much in our own way, each in the midst of our own particular circumstances, it's also another universal experience, and that's the experience of grief, which may be on many of our hearts this weekend especially. Now, many are right now in a period of deep mourning for a loved one who's died, whether of COVID or some other reason. At the same time, most, if not all of us, may in a different way, it's not the same, I don't mean to say it's the same, but we may be grieving the lives we were living only several weeks ago, pre-pandemic. That's a kind of grief, too. Well, one thing that characterizes the initial experience of grieving the loss of a dear one, most of us, maybe all of us eventually know this, is a disorienting feeling of having our world having utterly changed through our loss, while the rest of the world just goes on as if nothing has changed whatsoever and everything is fine. But for us, everything is far from fine. We're still, though we may yearn to go back to have our life as it was just a short while ago, our dear one by our side, we know that's impossible. And further, it's quite likely we cannot, not yet anyway, imagine how we can possibly take those next steps, go forward into some sort of life without our dear one. A new and different life we didn't choose and didn't want, the next room of our lives. But in fact, and of course, we must. Life goes forward. And the best way to go forward to begin with is to allow all the feelings, when it comes to grief, all the feelings, including this disorienting threshold feeling of being set apart from the rest of the world, and to allow also the experience of not knowing how to take that next step. Of course we don't know. And at the same time, somehow, maybe because of past experiences we've had or we've seen others, somehow managing faith enough that, in the Quaker phrase, way will open. Way will open if we have the patience to wait, just to wait a while, sometimes a long while, at this threshold we did not ask for yet cannot escape. And way almost always does open. Sooner or later, in fits and starts, it does. When it comes to personal grief, we never stop missing the dear one and the life we had, but we do find our way forward into some sort of next room, beyond the threshold, beyond this liminal in-between time. Well, so might it be for all of us as we live through this strange liminal threshold time of pandemic. Maybe, as I suggested, grieving the life we were living before the pandemic changed, it seems, everything, missing the old days, wishing, yearning to go back to how life was oh wait, it was only weeks, a couple months ago, but knowing we cannot. Rather than, can we be patient enough and courageous enough, even as life resumes some vague semblance of normal activity, can we be patient enough to allow and be part of making the world a better world than the one we'd left behind? After all, as I've been preaching one way or another over the past couple of months, how the world was before was careening towards climate disaster. How the world was before was and still is filled with too many social inequities. How the world was filled with too much rushing and not enough savoring. How the world was filled with too much division and hate and not enough respect, understanding, love. An invitation, it seems to me, has been offered us through this unbidden pandemic, an invitation to each of us personally and to all of us together, an invitation to have the patience and, yes, the courage, it's not easy, to allow this threshold liminal time, to be present for it, to remain in it long enough for the new to emerge, personally, as some may be revisioning some parts of their lives, and collectively, as we imagine, contemplate what our nation, what the world could be like. With faith that, however unbidden this time in our lives is, and it is quite unbidden, paraphrasing Rumi's words from that reading, it may indeed be clearing us out for something new, that short-term memory at the doorway, clearing us out for something new, maybe even better. And one last thought. Meanwhile, taking comfort, as I know I do, in much that remains and will remain, because I feel as disoriented as many others. But I take comfort in much that remains and always will remain, even as so much changes. Comfort in the words of truth tellers, even if the truth they tell can be difficult, it's better than the alternative. Comfort in goodness, the goodness we see all around us during these days and actually see always. Good folks manifesting goodness. And comfort too in beauty. The beauty in this here in New England, refulgent spring. All of this truth, beauty, goodness brings me comfort. Truth, beauty, goodness, among the many names of the God beyond all names. The God who embraces us all and, if we allow it, guides us to the next room. Amen. Blessed be, so may it be. Our closing song, our hymn, from our hymn book. Many of you saw an email we sent out yesterday, Spirit of Life, number 123 in our hymn books. I invite you to sing along. Some of you know it without the words in front of you. Spirit of life.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the sermons of compassion. Blowing rise in the sea. Open God, giving life the shape of justice. Woods only grows, wings set me free. Spirit of God, come to me, come to me.
Spirit of life, come to us all. Closing words from the Sufi poet Hafiz. Your fidelity to love, Hafiz writes, your fidelity to love, that is all you need. No day will then match your strength. What was once a fear or problem, will see you coming and step aside or even run. May it be so. Be well, be safe. May we take care of one another. May we take care of everyone as best we can. May it always be so. Blessed be. Amen. It is well with my soul by Philip Bliss, we've just heard. I will extinguish these flames, but not the love and the care with which they were lit, channeling the sorrows, the joys, and the concerns of those who shared. And I will extinguish the flame of our flaming chalice, chalice of our faith, but not the faith. May we carry faith in truth, beauty, goodness, and love wherever we go. Be well, friends.